But it's not a secret. My fantasy life is making films.
For filmmaker James Cameron, it's go big or go home.
I got to get my hands dirty. If I don't come home with my hands black at the end of the day, I don't feel like I've done a good day's work.
From Terminator to Titanic, his mega-budget movies pulled off remarkable feats.
He's a complete genius.
His uncompromising need for perfection created cinematic masterpieces.
Because he truly is a Renaissance man.
But pushed people to the edge.
Jim will bring the best out of you or kill you.
In the next hour, we explore the remarkable career of this movie maverick and his notoriously demanding ways.
He wants what he wants when he wants it. He doesn't care who's in his path.
This is James Cameron.
He's the king.
The True Hollywood Story. In 1995, James Cameron's dream to set an epic romance against the sinking of the Titanic was a long shot.
Anytime somebody goes to a studio and says, we're going to make a film where everybody knows the ending, and it's going to cost, about $100 million, maybe more, I think that's a pretty tough sell.
When the film was given the green light, expectations were high.
For me, that translates into the pressure is on to make it the best possible film that it can be.
But no one anticipated the difficulties that lay ahead.
The physicality of the production was extremely daunting.
We were working 16 hours, sometimes 18 hours. It doesn't allow a lot of time for sleep.
What ended up happening was they laced their suit with PCB, angel dust.
James was in over his head and worried he'd never work again. James Cameron was born to parents Philip and Shirley on August 16, 1954, in the mining town of Kapuskasing, Ontario. The family then moved to Chippewa, just minutes away from Niagara Falls, Canada. His parents each encouraged different sides of the young boy's personality.
My mom is an artist, and my dad's an engineer. He's not here tonight. My dad used to throw away my comic books in the trash. He'd take them out of my hand and throw them away, and my mom used to dig them out and give them back to me, and encourage that part of my life.
He was always drawing and he was always painting. Always had something weird. Very artistic. In fact, we all thought he was going to be a famous artist someday.
James also excelled in science, and his father hoped his son would follow in his footsteps.
He wanted him to become an engineer, he wanted somebody in the family to become an engineer.
And when he was born, he felt there was a collision of the left side hemisphere and the right side hemisphere, and he inherited equal parts of both.
And he was always talking. In fact, he was talking over my head sometimes. And he was always talking like future stuff.
By his mid-teens, James ditched comics for sci-fi, devouring all the classics.
Science fiction was a very emerging genre in the late 60s, 70s. 2001 is one example of that.
In 1968, James saw 2001: A Space Odyssey. The film combined his love of arts with science and sparked an obsession with movies.
He was just fascinated by the visuals in this movie, and he watched it about 10 times just trying to figure out how they did it.
Though he fantasized about making his own films, James felt his dreams were unrealistic.
I was raised in the historic village of Chippewa in Niagara. Come from a place like that seems so far from Hollywood, and it seems so impossible to be able to break into that world.
In early 1971, James couldn't believe his luck. His father took a better-paying job in Brea, California.
Jim moved into my neighborhood in Brea, like 30 years ago. And his mom and I became fast friends immediately. I thought he was very smart. Everything he said, I could just tell.
In Brea, James fell in love with 17-year-old Sharon Williams. The two were inseparable.
I remember seeing them together all the time. And I remember then for the summer, she went to Needles, California. And I remember Jim was going to visit her, and he made a great big hand. He was going to hitchhike.
As his high school days came to an end, James thought hard about his future. He was drawn to filmmaking, but couldn't ignore his love of science.
I think he got straight A's in physics, but he never studied. And he was fascinated by science. So he really wasn't 100% sure what he wanted.
Unfortunately, James's parents couldn't afford to put him through a 4-year college program to study film, and he was a little resentful of that. So instead, he enrolled in a 2-year physics program at the community college, but then he later switched to English literature.
In 1974, at the age of 20, James dropped out of college.
He just wanted to be a director. So he quit college because he wanted to pursue that career.
To earn some quick cash, James took a truck driving gig that paid $4 an hour. While working, he made time for his writing.
I had a trick. I'd pull behind a billboard where they couldn't see my truck, and I'd work quickly on some script ideas that I had while I was driving around, and then I'd pull out and try to make up the time and get back on my route in time, you know.
Meanwhile, Sharon remained supportive. The two were married on Valentine's Day in 1977.
They just had a simple ceremony with a few close friends and family.
3 months later, James caught a flick that changed his life.
I saw a movie called Star Wars, and I came home and there were so many images in it that were like things that I had imagined and wanted to see that I quit my job and I started making films.
James became obsessed with cinematography and taught himself all there was to know about movie making. Inspired by Star Wars, Cameron shot his first film.
Xenon Genesis was James Cameron's kind of first film. It was a 12-minute short film. I think it was funded by a group of dentists, but it really showcased what he was all about, which was technology and filmmaking.
The positive feedback James got for Xenogenesis gave him a boost of confidence. He brought his reel to the office of renowned producer Roger Corman.
Well, New World Pictures was the only independent film studio in Hollywood at the time. If you didn't work at New World, you really never got in the business.
Coming up, shattered dreams.
This was the worst mess I have ever seen